listen to the speaker and myself, and your audio will be muted the entire time. We'll be running 2 polls during the session. I would appreciate your full participation. Please use the chat room at the bottom of the screen to share your comments and interact with the moderator, the speaker, and other attendees. And finally, all questions should be focused on the topic and submitted in the chat room for the speaker to answer. Now that we've got that out of the way, let us meet our speaker for today. Bolanle Asuma is currently the Director of Professional Development for Africa at a foremost management consulting firm with a global footprint. Prior to this time, she served in various people-related roles at different organizations, including KPMG, Air Nigeria, and Cordwell Communications UK. Bolanle is passionate about people management and development, helping people realize their best potential at work and in life. She holds a master's degree in human resource management from the University of Manchester and a Bachelor of Arts in English language from Lagos State University. She is a member of CIPM Nigeria and an accredited Level 2 MBTI professional. Bolanle will be taking the topic, taking care of your emotional well-being. Thank you, Bolanle, for joining us. It is such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Temitope. And good morning, everyone. Before we start off for today, I have 2 quick caveats. I'm not a medical doctor, so everything I'm saying is completely from the standpoint of a people manager and the impact of well-being on people at work and in life. So if you have issues around medicine, we can give you advice on where to go find help, but that won't be covered in this forum. That's one. And the second thing is that everything I'm saying is completely from my own personal experience and experiences of people I've interacted with. I'm not speaking on behalf of any of the organizations I've worked with, so please do not attribute any of my comments there. If you have questions, let's send those questions to Temi, and she would help collate throughout the session, and then we can come back with answers. Again, remember that some of the answers may be sitting with you guys, right? So if you have ideas on some of the questions that people are posting, please answer them in the chat room. We want to make this as lively and interactive as possible. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Bolanle.
So we'll be starting off this morning. Temitope, please take that back, okay?
Excellent. So without further ado, let's jump right in. It is now time for the first poll. We've got only 3 questions, or we've got 1 question with 3 options. And the idea is to get a feeler of your current work situation. So I'll be launching the poll, and please answer. And we'll give about 2 minutes for that to come in, and then we'll start. The votes are coming in. Thank you. So please send in your questions as the presentation is going on. Would love to have a very interactive session. We have about 80% of the answers. We'll round it off in another minute, and then Bolanle will have the floor. Okay, thank you. And there we have the results of the poll. Okay, you may have the floor, Bolanle.
Thank you. So good morning again, everyone. As you would have seen from the results, it looks like the COVID pandemic is still impacting on our work lives, at least 44% of us said we are still working fully from home. 26% said we are working in the hybrid situation where you spend some time in the office and then some time at home. And only 30% said that they were working fully in the office. What this means is that this information, this session is very timely because our lives as we know it before now isn't isn't going to go back to that normal for quite a while, right? When I talk to different organizations, what I hear is, I'm not sure when we are going to go back to the office. For many, they've even already decided, even if there was no more positive cases in Nigeria, the earliest we would go back to work is in January. So it means that we still have at least 3 months of either working fully from home or working hybrid, while we have a third of us today already back in the office. But even then, I'm sure you can see the impact of those of us at home on your work life, because if you're sharing a building with different organizations, chances are that only 30% of the colleagues in those buildings are back at work. So today, without further ado, I have a second poll. Forgive me, we are going to launch the polls up front, and then I can let you relax and enjoy the rest of the session. So what we would like to do is to share a second poll on how we are feeling today. We have 5 options from feeling great to feeling terrible. And it's okay, right? Don't overthink it. Don't try to overanalyze it. Just go through exactly how you're feeling, and then let's have a conversation on that. Temi, can you please help launch the poll for this one? Because I'm sharing my screen for some reason, I can't launch.
Absolutely, I'm on it.
Thank you. So again, don't overthink it. How are you feeling today? Not how you felt 2 days ago, but in this minute, how are you feeling? And use that to give us your answer. Another 15 seconds. Again, remember we said we don't want to overthink it. So it shouldn't take you long to be able to take this decision on how you're feeling. Okay, Temi, can you stop the poll and let's see the results? I'm just taking notes of the answers we got. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I would go to my next slide, and the next slide, forgive me, I'm giving you too much work. As I said, once we are done here, then we go into the meat of it. I want you to tell me why you're feeling the way you are. If you go to the top of your screen, you would see a button that says annotate. When you click on annotate, you can either click text, you can select whatever to just type in quickly why you're feeling the way you're feeling. So why are you feeling great? Why are you feeling good? Why are you feeling terrible? I think one person said they were feeling terrible. If you can tell us why you're feeling terrible, don't worry. We won't see who typed what by the time you're done. Why are you feeling bad or okay? Okay, so I'm getting some comments. People are overthinking. Some people are feeling happy because they are achieving their tasks and they don't have any pressures. Someone came down with malaria. Someone is feeling happy. We see on the screen, they're hanging out with friends. It's the weekend, nothing in particular. Okay. Thanks, guys. So we can see here all the different reasons why we are feeling the way we are feeling. The reason I wanted us to do this quickly is because we sometimes don't take the time to pause, to one, understand how we are feeling, and to deep down a second level to see why we are feeling the way we are. Someone says flexible working, someone is just grateful for the opportunity to be alive amidst the pandemic. Okay, guys, thank you. So I'm going to clear all the annotations now so we can go to the meat of what we've been talking about. Cool, thank you. So what do we mean by emotional well-being? Emotional well-being refers to the quality and individual experiences, the quality of emotions you experience. And this is, of course, influenced by the different things going on around us. Of course, this is apt because with the pandemic, the situational factors that are affecting our emotional well-being is quite obvious. What we then see from medical doctors are saying that when there is decreased emotional well-being, we see the impact of it both on our mental health and on our physical health. And so the reason why this is critical to us today is because at work, whether you are physically in your offices or you're working from home, the emotional well-being of yourself and your colleagues would impact on your own performance and your team's performance. It would impact on the overall morale and motivation from the employees around you. It would also show up in how frequently people are calling in sick, whether they are calling in sick and not being able to come in physically into the office, or they are calling in sick and not being able to work from home. And of course, ultimately, this impacts on your organization's success. And when I say organization, it can be your own business as an entrepreneur. It can also be the success of the organization where you work, where you function as a team lead. And so that's the reason overall why we want to have this discussion today. During normal times, research shows that 1 in 4 people are affected by mental health, even in normal situations. It shows that 1 in 6 people encounter a mental health challenge in a normal week, and 2/3 of the people who have these challenges would never seek professional help. So if you extrapolate that and bring it into the situation where we are now with COVID, you can imagine how much more amplified the mental health situations people are going through would be. There are increased feelings of loneliness. For many of us who are living alone, we are feeling lonely, even though we are no longer in lockdown. Many people are still afraid to go out because there are still reports of cases of COVID. There are doubts on whether or not we are testing everyone, and people who have the virus are going out to be tested. So when you talk to different people, there are still people who are afraid to go out, and they would only go out for critical things, right? There is increased stress for people who are parents because you're trying to juggle working and childcare or homeschooling. Even though schools have now finally reopened this week, a lot of schools are saying they are going to be running the hybrid programs, or they are still going to from home. It means that you have your normal day job, and then you then have solving for children or solving for an elderly parent who is dependent on you. There's also the stress of the workload, right? Because whether we want to acknowledge it or not, there is increased work just because of the crisis. So for the people who are in HR, for instance, there is questions around how do we keep our people safe, which is in addition to their normal payroll and training and things that they have to do. For the people in finance, there's a lot of questions around how do we manage our cash flow during this period? How do we ensure that the business stays viable? For the CEOs and for the business owners, there is increased pressure on how do they keep their businesses running and functioning while the pandemic is running through. And there are surges in anxiety and depressions that we are hearing. I ran this program for another organization a few months ago, and surprisingly, people did come out to say that they feel like they've had more feelings of anxiety that is impacting on their sleep. There are people who say that they think they may be depressed, but in Nigeria, for some reason, we don't speak about depression, right? So people are not going to go get tested, to go get clinically diagnosed for depression and then get the help they need. So ultimately, we all need to play a part in ensuring our own mental health and emotional well-being, but also to contribute to the mental health and emotional well-being of those around us. Those around us being our immediate family, our colleagues, the people that we see on a day-to-day basis. So what we want to do today is to, one, go through the tips and tricks, which is what I promised. And then we have a dialogue on how people are feeling. If you need help, where could you potentially get help? And what are you doing to help other people? So one of the things that we found is that in being at home, there are opportunities for us to improve on bad habits and establish good ones. But for some reason, and I'm a culprit, right? So don't think that I'm coming to preach to you something that I've not also suffered from. We are not, at least 44% of us are working from home, which means that we are not traveling or commuting in Lagos traffic. So we have time. What are we using that additional time for? Many of us are working in the same spot from morning till night. What are we doing to ensure that, given that predictability, we can infuse some good habits into the things we do? And lastly, with remote working, to a large extent, we have control over how we schedule our work. I do know, at least in the last session that I had, there were complaints about managers still trying to fill up the time throughout the day, but there are ways to manage that such that you can create some flexibility to plan for the things that you prefer. So what are some of the things that I'm asking you to do as an individual today? I'm saying set up your workstation. If you don't have a workstation at home, find a space, even if it's one chair in your one room apartment. If you have a large house and you can set up a study, if it's your dining table, have somewhere that is predictable. So everyone in that house sharing the space with you knows that this is your workspace. Define your daily and weekly goals, because if you don't do that, what ends up happening is that life happens. When I started working from home 6 months ago, the plan was to go walking or running at least twice a week. I did that for the first month, then it fell off. And now as I'm talking to you guys, I'm saying to myself, I need to pick up on that goal that I set for myself. You need to communicate proactively what your goals are and what that means for your availability at work. For some of my team members, what they've told me is, I have 2 young children, I'm homeschooling. Yes, they have internet and laptop, but they can't do anything by themselves. So between 8 and 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm not going to be available for calls. I would check emails and respond, but I can't join any calls between 8 and 10 while I'm setting them up and at least making sure they are getting some learning under their belt. The fourth thing that I would advise you to do as an individual is to stay connected over virtual coffee if you can't go out, over lunches. If you can, plan for social distancing, social events to allow you to stay connected. Invest in your own development. I know that that's something you're doing today by joining this session. It's a Saturday morning, and we could be doing anything besides being on this webinar, but we've all chosen to be here. So I'm giving you a pass mark for doing that. And the last thing is to make time for yourself and your family. Because what we find is that the 6 months have run by very quickly. It's potentially 3 more months for some of us. Hopefully there is no second wave. If there is, it may be another 6 more months in the new year. If that's the case, if you're not careful, you would have spent the whole time working and not thinking about family, thinking about yourself. And so actively plan for what are you going to do. If you look back to the last 6 months, what did you do for yourself? What development did you bring to yourself? Because those are all the things that contribute to emotional well-being. The feeling that this year didn't end up being a waste is something that is going to make us feel good with ourselves. So that's something to think about. I then have like some practical things that we should consider. Give me a second, I need water. So you need to establish when you start working and when you stop. For me, I start my day at 7:30 in the morning and I try to end around 6 so that at least I can have dinner with my children. Then I can continue when they go to bed. Because when in the first few months of working from home, I took it for granted that we were all at home so I could see them. But I realized that even though we were at home, I really wasn't spending time with my children. So on the weekend, they will tell me all the things that happened during the week. And I started feeling terrible emotionally because it felt like I was at home, but I still wasn't at home because I didn't know what they were doing. So establish a routine for when you start working and when you stop working. For those who are going into offices, I know that that routine is kind of set, but what we are finding is that because many people are leaving their offices early, they end up working when they get home and there's no stop time still. So if you're going into the office and you know that you're going to continue working when you get home, plan for, I'm going to do this for 2 hours every day, and then I'm going to have the rest of the time to do anything else I want to do. That way you feel like you have some control over how life is being thrown at you. The second thing is to clearly differentiate your work environment from your home environment. If you're working from home, even for those on their hybrid work model today, make sure that you're not working on the bed, because at some point you start to realize that it's impacting on sleep. If you're working on your bed, then your mind mentally gets to a point of this bed is now a workplace, and you won't be able to relax enough to sleep when it's time to sleep on the same bed. So if it means bringing a chair into the bedroom and having that as your workspace instead of sitting on the bed, then that's something to do. Find time for physical exercise during the day. And it's super easy, right? I'm not asking you to go to the gym while you're supposed to be working. I'm saying stand up for a few minutes, take a stretch, find 5 minutes to walk around, and then go back to working. Don't sit at your desk throughout the day, which leads us to the fourth point, which is eat away from your work desk. I'm guilty of this. Sometimes I don't even remember to eat when I'm working, because I kind of take it for granted that whenever the hunger finally hits, I'll go find food. But make sure that you plan your meals and you stand up from where you're working. That helps you want to put in some physical activity, but it also helps you to step away and eat properly. The fifth thing is to dress for work. And this one, every time I say this, people laugh at me, right? Because they're like, oh, we're at home, so why are we bothering to dress up? Your mind mentally kicks in that it's time to work when you're dressed for work. And for me, I couldn't do the whole dressing up and makeup from top to bottom. What I do is sometimes it's my work top that is work, or it's my shoes that is work. So my children laugh at me because sometimes I'm wearing my shorts and then I'm wearing heels. But it just gives me the hump to go and maybe go pick up an argument with a senior member of the firm that I'm going to go and argue with, right? And my shoe almost mentally signals to me that I'm ready to have that conversation now. It's a serious conversation. I'm in my heels, and that's what I'm doing. As I'm speaking to you now, I have my heels on because it's Saturday morning. Mentally, it's like I'm supposed to be relaxed. And so I needed the shoes like 10 minutes before this session started to remind myself that it is work. Even though it is volunteer work, it is still work, it's serious work, so I need to do it properly. So I'm wearing my heels today. But I'm advising, if it's just your shirt, make sure it's not t-shirt, it's not rumpled, it is ironed, because it's not for the people watching you on Zoom, it's not for the people speaking to you, it's for your own emotional well-being, because you feel like you're working. So that's why I'm emphasizing on this, because this is one of the ones that people always roll their eyes when I mention it. The next thing I would ask you to do is to be conscious of when you're transitioning from work to non-work and non-work to work, because that is going to show up in your work, in the output of the performance, right? It's easy to be having a casual conversation with someone at home and then your MD calls. So when that call comes through, you need to remember almost immediately that you've switched from casual discussions to formal discussions, right? When you have kids around you, remember to spend quality time with them in the time you have apportioned for non-work, and not try to mix it up. It ending up with mistakes and errors, right? Because then you're supposed to be typing a formal email, but you're having a casual discussion, then it shows up. Or you're supposed to be relaxed and talking to family members, but you're still in formal mode, so you're not relaxed enough. So again, as I mentioned, remember to transition consciously from work to non-work during your day. I ask for people to go out to get sunlight. I've had a couple of friends whose children have ended up with vitamin D deficiency because they've been stuck indoors throughout the day. So remember to step out, even if it's for like 5 or 10 minutes. You don't need to take a stroll if you don't want to, but if you can throw that in, please do. During the day, before the sun goes down, go out for fresh air. You get vitamin D, you are not bored, you feel like you're taking a walk, And you're seeing people. For those who are staying alone, you're seeing people. The eighth thing is to think about the lighting in your work environment. If the lighting is dim, it impacts on your mental health. You start to feel down, it drains your energy. So make sure that the lighting around where you are is the appropriate one for work. Remember to have a wind down routine. When we were working in the offices, we would close our laptops, we would turn off our computers, we would get into Lagos traffic, and that was our routine of winding down. By the time you get home, you've finally detached from work. Now we're at home for most of us, at least 70% of us are working from home in one form or the other, whether it's hybrid or fully. So you need to be conscious about winding down. For me, my winding down is I literally pick up my handbag where I put my laptop, and it signals to my mind that, okay, I'm done for the day. I can start to stop thinking about work. Because if you don't do that, you're going to continue to think about work even when you're supposed to have stopped thinking about work. If you need to step out of your house for 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the day to mentally prepare yourself for being at home, that's something to do as well. Because if you don't do all these things, what you end up with is that your mind is constantly alert in work mode, and so you're not relaxing enough to be able to get into a space of relaxation, a state of sleeping, a state of being sociable with non-work topics. And the last thing on my list, sorry. The last thing on my list is to get physical exercise, workouts. And I'm not asking you again to go to the gym. Your workout can be literally in that same workspace. If it's a one room, if it's a 5-bed house, you can do your skipping in that small space. You can do your walk exercise in your room. If you go onto YouTube, there are loads of instructors that do dances, that do 30 minutes workout that you can do in small spaces. You can do push-ups in a small space, but you need to fit that in, because what happens is that when you work out, your body releases hormones that help you to be mentally alert, to make you feel happy. And so what I try to do is, when I can squeeze it in, 30 minutes before I start the day, I'll try to do a 30-minute walk in my room. By the time I'm done, I'm feeling energized. I'm feeling like, okay, I can do it again today. Because after a while, you start to get tired physically. You start to get tired mentally. And I'll tell you my own personal experience. At the beginning of the crisis, I was quite excited because I was one of those who always prayed for, can we just have something to make us stay at home for a bit so we can all relax? But after 4 weeks of being at home, I was ready to go back onto the Lagos street and traffic. What I didn't realize was that it started taking a toll on me mentally. And then I couldn't sleep as much. Because I wasn't sleeping, I started snapping. I started snapping both with my colleagues and with my family members. So my children say something that I would normally be a bit more liberal with. I would snap at them. And at some point, I started worrying because I would go to bed about 10, even though I wasn't ready to sleep. Because I couldn't sleep, I would then started forcing myself to go to bed at 10 o'clock in the night. And by 2 a.m. every day I was up. Then I would go onto Instagram, check what's going on, because I still couldn't work, right? I would go on social media for like 2 or 3 hours, and then 5 a.m. in the morning, I'm ready to sleep, but it's now morning. So I did this for like 4 weeks, and then I spoke to a colleague of mine who says this could actually be the crisis taking a toll on you mentally. So I reached out to a psychologist to walk through what I was going through, and the person said, actually, there are many people that are going through these same experiences, but they're chalking it up to different things and not acknowledging that the crisis and the pandemic was indeed impacting on our mental health. And that's the reason why, for me, this is important, right? Because at some point, I would read emails that I should either ignore or answer politely, and then I just go crashing on that person, right? And that's why I'm saying to you, if you're in that space where it is even something as simple as just feeling more tired than normal, it could be an emotional well-being situation that you need to go and check. It could be sleep, and you need to go and check it. It could be your eating that then gets messed up that you need to go and check. And when I say check, it's not like go to a doctor to say, oh, I'm having mental health issues. It could be just talking to someone who knows you well, who can then say, actually, you've had this before the crisis, so maybe it's not different, or this is something new that seems to be happening to you. But talk to someone who's close to you, who can help you pick up on some of these differences in habits and in the way you do things before COVID and after COVID. So the last thing that I'm going to talk about is how we should try to implement this in teams, because most organizations work in teams, right? You don't do this in silos. And whatever it is that you're planning to do individually needs to fit into the plans with your team. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful. So the first thing that you should be thinking about doing is agreeing to a weekly priority and stick to them. So on Monday morning, hold the check-in. What did we plan to do last week? What did we do? What are we planning to do this week? Because that kind of give you an idea of, in your own contribution to the team, these are the 5 things that you must do before the end of the week. And it helps you to then plan your own personal goal for that week. When you do your daily check-ins, one, it helps you to know how everybody is feeling so that you can also check in on their own emotional well-being, but it gives you a chance to also tell people how you're feeling. So at the beginning of this session, we did a quick check-in on how you're feeling. That's literally what I do with my team, because I have people spread across Africa. And we go in, I'm feeling great, I'm not feeling great. Why are you not feeling great? So that if there's something we can do as a team to help you feel great, then we start to do that. We don't want to wait until people have mental breakdowns before we fix any mental health issues that may be creeping in without us being aware. The third thing is to share your working hours. Like I said, if you need to be away from your desk between 8 and 10 to homeschool your children, to take care of an elderly parent, then you should share that with the team, because then the team knows that Bolanle won't be available between 8 and 10. So if we're planning any team meetings, we won't plan it around the time when she's supposed to be away from her desk. You should discuss your communication preferences. I'm better on WhatsApp. So if you need me urgently, even if I'm not at my desk, I'm most likely with my phone and I can respond quickly. If you prefer phone calls, then that's something you should mention to the team so people know exactly the preference that you have. For some of us, we just hate phone calls. Some people cannot stand emails, even though it's the standard work communication tool. But while you're working from home, organizations are becoming more flexible. And so we are asking that you discuss those preferences with your team and what's the best way for messages to be shared. There is Slack now. A lot of organizations are using Slack to share information real time. Some people are using WhatsApp. Some people are using FaceTime. A lot of people are using Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and things like that. Agree meeting norms, including scheduling and protected hours. So for a lot of organizations, when COVID started, we didn't really have any agreed norms, right? So you just see randomly an invite asking you to join a call at 8 p.m. in the night. Meanwhile, you've been up since 6 a.m. in the morning, so you've already put in 14 hours of work. At 8 p.m. is the last time you want to be having any grown-up discussion. And so I think having that discussion upfront and letting the team know that you start your day at 6, so can we have any last official call around 6 p.m. in the evening versus 8 p.m. in the night is something to think about. What then happens is that the team lead would look at all the different preferences and try to slot it in a way that helps to work for everyone. If you're the team lead, again, I'm asking you to please go and ask your team to do this so that you're also helping them to fit in their personal goals and preferences into the team norms so that you can still achieve the results that you have to achieve without anybody getting burnt out and without anybody calling in sick. Because at some point, if there are mental health challenges, as we said at the beginning, it will show up physically and then people would be sick. And the last thing is to agree health-related norms to elevate individual and team well-being. For me, my team insisted that they wanted to do yoga. I've never done yoga in my life. But again, I needed to do it because that's what most of the people in the team wanted to do. So someone found yoga links on YouTube. We would join Zoom. Everybody will go on the videos and then they will do yoga for like 10 minutes. And that made them happy, so I was happy. For some people, it is finding a coach that they can speak to during their time at work or after work, so that they can go and vent there, so that they can release all the tension that they built throughout the week. But this is something that you need to look at as a team. For some people now, they are doing bicycle competitions, bike riding competitions. They are doing exercises on Saturday mornings as a team while still social distancing, because that helps with one, connectivity, but it also helps with the physical health and the mental health. So that's something as a team that you should also be thinking about. How do we elevate the mind and the body of and the purpose of each person in the team? I think the crisis, as I said, has given us real opportunities to bring our best selves if we can really be deliberate about it. But if we are not, it would also mean that people are going to fall behind. And the impact of the falling behind, we would not see it today, right? Because most people are still at home. 70% of us are still at home today. We would only see it in 6 months' time, in 3 months' time when we get back to work. And at that point, you would realize that you had an opportunity that you've lost during this period while people were working from home. In conclusion, I'm asking you to take care of your emotional well-being. It's not a nice to do, it's not a nice to have, it's a must do and a must have, because it's going to impact both on your own performance as a team manager, but the performance of your team. It's going to help to reduce turnover in your teams, because the last thing you want is to continue to replace people every time someone has to go away for being ill. It helps with individual contributions to the teams. It helps to build our resilience to cope with the changes that COVID has brought about. Are those changes going to go away? Most likely not. Many organizations are going to end up running the hybrid mode of working, even when COVID is finally gone, because we've tried it, we've seen that it works. Most employees won't want to go back to a full 9 to 5. And if that's what it's going to be, then how do we make sure that people continue to stay emotionally well while they're working from home? Thank you. So I've tried to rush through in 40 minutes. We would go to questions, we would go to comments. We would like to hear reactions from you in terms of the things that you have been doing to stay emotionally well while we've been at home since March. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bolanle. That was a very excellent session, and thank you for sharing those actionable insights. I totally agree with you. As far as, the guidelines for managing ourselves go, I find that also, and I mean, great minds. I'm also wearing my heels right now. I find that when I dress up for work and I get the lighting right, it just gives me, it gingers me up for the day to take on the task. Also, when we were working physically at the office, I would always have my tea a certain time. So I try to continue with that tradition. So it gives me that mindset. And to also speak to one of the last things you said about team bonding, CFA Society Nigeria is currently doing a 30-day step challenge virtually, where we're all connected and, having a competition of who's going to, walk the most in the month of September. And I must agree that it's really helped with team bonding. So thank you very much. We do have questions, a lot of questions. I hope that we can, run through most of it before 12 o'clock. So I'll start off with the first one. Somebody is asking that, how do you get the leadership of your organization on board with self-care and employee well-being if it's currently not top of mind?
So what I tried to do, and when we started this, and this is what I've also advised managers to do, is to keep track of how their teams have been doing at the beginning of the COVID or before COVID, and how they're performing today. What every organization lead do not want is impact on the economics, right? So if you can show through the numbers that if we do this at 5 naira, it's going to improve performance by 30 naira. I think that's an argument to have, but it would require you pulling data in terms of the number of hours people were pulling in terms of the results we were bringing in as a team versus what we are able to bring in today. If you also have people who've been sick, you should track the number of hours people have been away from work because of sickness, right? Because most times when you track it down, it comes back to overall employee well-being. So I think the way to go through this or to go about this is to pull the numbers to show and justify to your organization leads why doing this is going to help with the bottom line ultimately.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you, Balali. There's a lady here asking, she considers herself to be seemingly antisocial because even before the lockdown, she didn't go out, frequently. And she finds that because of that, now she seems to be alone. She hardly sees people. She doesn't see anybody. She spends all of that time working, but she seems to have lost interest in everything. So she's just wondering what she can do, how she can, motivate herself because she's spending more hours on the job, yet the output is declining. So she'd like to know how she can correct that.
So I think the first thing would be if you have health insurance, most health insurance would cover seeing a psychologist, seeing a therapist. So you should look to see if your health insurance covers that, and you should reach out to a psychologist. I've been an advocate of, I know in Nigeria, we never talk about mental health, but it's real, right? And I've been an advocate for speaking to a psychologist. One, it helps you to speak in a confidential space where you would not be judged about what you've been going through. And most times they would help you think through what practical solutions could be that you should be taking. So for instance, one of the things they will do is to probe on why you are not very sociable and what has happened sometime in your past that may be impacting on the way you feel today, and hopefully help you get over that hump. Because ultimately, humans are social beings. You cannot be alone and be fine. So it's not surprising you're feeling the way you're feeling now. So that would be my first advice. If you do not have access to a psychologist, I think go online, find people who are offering free coaching, free mentoring opportunities, because that would also help you with, at the minimum, finding someone you can talk to that would not judge you.
Thank you, Bolanle. So I have a question. This is a question particularly, it applies to me. It's around digital distraction, right? I find that we seem to all be connected, online. Everyone is on one device or another. So I'll give you a story. I have a 2-year-old, and sometime last month, she was 2 in April. So that makes her about 2.5 now. And then sometime in April, she walks up to me last month, and then she said, Mommy, I want to participate in my Zoom class. So I'm like, the first thing that came to my mind was participate, spell it. Can you spell participate, And then your Zoom class. So she knows that she sits in front of the computer. She understands that the teacher is on the screen, and then they're, singing nursery rhymes and shapes and colors and numbers. And it got me thinking for like 30 minutes, because when I was 2, I didn't know what a computer was. I'm so sure that we were using slates and chalk, and then everything is just so different now. The world has really changed. So even my 2-year-old can sit on my phone and navigate. She can sit on the iPad and do a Zoom. And my husband is on his laptop and I'm on my laptop. And then the older one, everyone is just distracted. So sometimes I just have to consciously take a step back to say, well, all in the house, yet we are not connected, So is there anything we can do? And again, digital distraction also adds to stress. I know that you made note of, how you were constantly on Instagram, the barrage of information on social media, and all of that actually gets to stress you and it gives you feelings of anxiety. So how can we manage that?
So one practical thing I've done personally is, and it was my 10-year-old who decided to do this, it says do 1 day of technology free. So everyone, you submit your laptops, your phones, the TV is switched off for the whole day. The first time we did that, I thought I was having withdrawals. Like after about an hour, it started feeling strange because at least you check your phone maybe 4 or 5 times in every hour, right? And by 2 p.m. on that Saturday, I started begging, like I just need to see what's going on outside. But we did it, right? And I think that doing that is a practical thing that we can all do, even if it's just you saying, today I'm not going to touch my laptop, I'm not going to touch my phone, because Monday to Friday we have no choice. And if you're someone who gets called into emergency work during the weekends, then letting your teams know that I'm not going to be available today at all, so that I can find myself again. I can read a book, I can clean my house, are things that I would do. So we did it like 3 months ago, and he's already started asking again to do it. I don't know how I feel about it. But in the workspace, what I do is to say, guys, sometimes I'm zoomed out. I've been on Zoom calls from morning till night. So can we do a quick call? Can we chat on WhatsApp instead of jumping on Zoom for every discussion that we need to have? I think just having those conversations, and it's surprising when you ask, people are very quick to agree with you. So just having the conversations and putting in the request for what works for you to be fine emotionally is something that we need to do.
Thank you, Bolanle. So you just said something that is a perfect segue to the next question, right? You said something about letting your team know you're not available. Now we find that because of the precarious situation we're in, some people have lost their jobs, some have had to take a pay cut. The fear of job loss is actually making people worried about letting their managers know they won't be available, because you're like, you know what, I need to constantly prove myself that I'm working. I need to let the organization know, I need to justify why they should keep me in this, pandemic induced recession that we're looking at. So somebody asked a question here saying that, look, she's been working so hard and she's stressed, but how can she deal with the guilt trip of asking to go on leave? Because everyone is like, you're working from home anyway, and then you're not traveling, right? So why are you going on leave? So how do we manage this?
So I'm going to throw that open to Banji as the president of the society and a manager who has probably had questions like this brought to him. Banji, someone is asking us here, how do you manage the guilt trip and the fear of asking for time off for fear that you may lose your job by the time you return?
Well, Bolale, thanks for setting me up there. I wasn't expecting to speak at all, so that's a setup, but I'll just try my best. For me, I tell my team members, we all need to know our deliverables, we know our targets. And once we set that, I really don't expect you to go out of your way simply to impress me with eye service, or you just trying to show me that you are working. Because to be honest, for me, it's not activity, it's result that matters. So if you are on from morning till night and just doing activity, and at the end of the day, there's really no result, it really doesn't count for anything. And I want to assume for many managers, that's really how people measure success. People measure success based on results rather than based on efforts and based on all the things that you keep doing over and over just to impress people. So my advice to people would be yourself. Don't go out of your way trying to please people. Once you start doing that, you've set up yourself for failure. You've set up yourself for stress that you don't deserve. You've set up yourself for things that could damage your mental and your mental well-being. So focus on the results. If you achieve your results in 1 hour, please take the rest of the day off and have fun. You don't have to keep staying there because you simply want to impress people. So that's the way I say it. And I don't know if you have a different view, Bolani, from an HR perspective.
No, that's completely apt, Banji. We do not most times check the process within which people get to the answer. What we check is the answer in itself. So if you can get it done in 5 hours, as long as it's done, your manager doesn't have to know that you then end up with 3 extra hours to do light stuff. And whether or not you stay around, if you're going to lose your job, you're going to lose your job anyway. So my push would be, you need to make sure you're fine mentally and physically to be able to continue to deliver to the quality that is expected of you, but also to be able to think about what your options are both within the organization and outside the organization. So if you need time off, because if you don't take the time off, you're going to end up being sick. Then it's better to take that time off. And don't feel guilty about it. That's why the HR laws, the employment laws in Nigeria stipulate that organizations give their people time off. So no one is doing you a favor by giving you the leave in your contract. It is something you are entitled to.
Thank you very much, Bolanle. And thank you, Mr. President. Might I also add that some of us at the society office are stressed and we would like to go to, Dubai has opened up, just to distress. So we'll come back to you, Mr. President. Thank you for being open to allowing us to take time off. And, okay. So I have another question. We're wrapping up soon, so we have time for maybe one or two. Somebody is asking that, how can we deal with suffering from a sleeping disorder? This is something they've been, handling back and forth, but it seems like it's been made worse with the current C2. And, he's been taking medication. So he wants to know how they can deal with this. Yeah. And to also add, since you're a people manager, something dropped in my mind. When you have this kind of challenges, is this something you also think you can discuss with HR just to take some time off compassionately, or would you become the gist of the organization to say his head is not correct? That kind of thing.
No, so I think you need to look at the organization you're in and the HR you have in that organization. Depending on the type of structure you have, I think this is absolutely something you should be able to discuss, right? When you don't sleep, the sleep in itself is the output of something that is underlying. It's going to impact on work, it's going to impact on other things, and then it becomes a bigger risk to the firm, to the organization. So think about someone who's not sleeping well that is working in a manufacturing plant. Then there's going to be a work accident that is probably going to impact not just that person, but people around him or her. And the downtime that is going to be caused by that accident is going to be a bigger problem for the organization than letting you go away to go and sleep. But seriously, this is something that I struggled with as well. And I found several books around how to get sleep. I found webinars that had been done on how to sleep better. And some of the tips that I took away from it that I can share with you, and then you can go find more, is one, when it's time to sleep, make sure you don't have your phone around you, because your mind is constantly thinking about the phone. The lighting from the phone affects your ability to wind down and sleep. That was the first thing for me, right? And it stuck because I knew this was one of the things contributing to my lack of sleep. The second thing is how late you're eating, because you need a few hours for the food to digest. And so if you've eaten late, then it's very likely it's going to impact on when you can finally go to sleep. The third thing is if there are real stress issues that are creating the lack of sleep that is impacting on your sleep, then you need to go and deal with those things that are stressors for you. And you need to take time to determine what those stressors are and deal with them. And ultimately, the drugs would only help you for so long. If you don't deal with the underlying issues, you're going to be on sleep meds permanently. And I have taken them. I realized that every time I stopped, then I didn't sleep. So I realized that I had to go deal with the stressors so that I could then sleep by myself. So if you go online, find webinars on sleep, find books on sleep, and then maybe take one or two of the tips that I've given you now and see how that works. I think it should help.
Splendid, thank you. So we'll take our final question. I don't want this to end. I'm having such a good time, but we have to keep to time. So the final question, someone is asking, following the pandemic, some organizations now have to limit their work hours, right? And you might not be in a position to be assertive about your preferred slot. So how do you manage this?
So I think conversations need to be had. I'm a big believer in when you don't ask, then you don't get told yes or no. But when you ask, there's a 50% chance you get what you want. So at the minimum, go and have that discussion about if there's a flexibility on you choosing your preference. You may not get the exact match for the time you want, but at least you can pick something that works slightly for you. So I'm advising whoever asks this question to please go and ask their manager about how flexible the organization would be around working. You should also think about if it is limited time. Do you have to be in the office physically, or can you do the work at home? But then if you're asking for these things, you then need to be on top of your game, right? I'm one for performance. You cannot ask for all these things and then not bring your A game to the table. So if you are saying everyone else is going to work and I'm going to work at home, then the quality of your work cannot drop. You cannot be missing when you said you're available. And I think if you have those things, it gives the manager or the team lead comfort to be able to say yes to your request.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. This has been an immensely rewarding session. Thank you for sitting with us, Bolanle. Once again, on behalf of everyone at CFA Society Nigeria, I would like to thank every person who has logged into this session. And I hope you found it as useful and informative as I did. So thank you for attending, and please follow us on all our social media handles to stay updated with other webinars and events at CFA Society NG on Instagram and Twitter, and CFA Society Nigeria on LinkedIn and Facebook. I'll take that again, at CFA Society NG on Instagram and Twitter, and CFA Society Nigeria on LinkedIn and Facebook. Thank you all, and God bless.
Thank you.